A groundbreaking move by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, releasing body cam footage of an officer-involved shooting from last summer. It comes just weeks after activists called for more transparency from the agency as tensions towards law enforcement have flared across the nation. Hope you're having a good Thursday evening, everyone. I'm Lou Turner. So the video is from a shooting from about a year ago where the officer shot and killed a man, seen in the video holding a knife to the neck of a man in a wheelchair. On your side's Robert Bradfield, live outside JSO, which ruled this week the officer's actions followed department policy. Robert?
And that officer has been identified as Tyler Landreville, and he went before the Sheriff's Office Response to Resistance Board on Tuesday, giving his account of what happened. And in defense of the hostage's life, he said he simply had to fire his weapon.
Put the f***ing knife down!
You're looking at 5 seconds of a 34-second encounter between Jacksonville Sheriff's Officer Tyler Landreville and Frankie Feliciano. Police say Feliciano had a knife held to a man's throat last July. Officer Landreville shot Feliciano 3 times, killing him.
Given what I was seeing, what I was hearing, and the totality of circumstances, and at that point I realized I had no choice but to discharge my firearm in defense of the hostage's life.
Officer Landreville demonstrated what he saw that night to JSO's Response to Resistance Board, which heard his side of the story Tuesday. The officer told the board his decision to shoot Feliciano came when he saw Feliciano holding the knife close to the hostage's throat.
The stimulus to fire was the fact that I saw the knife, and I knew 100% that there was a deadly weapon involved in the incident and extreme close proximity to the hostage.
The man in the wheelchair received minor injuries. The board determined Officer Landreville followed department policy. Their decision comes nearly 3 months after the state attorney's office wrote to JSO, "We have concluded that the death of Frankie Feliciano was justified under applicable Florida law." Now, Ben Frazier with the Northside Coalition, as you may know, has been pressuring the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office really for years to quickly release body camera video of officer-involved shootings. He does tell us tonight, while he does appreciate the release of this video today, he goes on to tell us trust, transparency, fairness, impartiality, integrity, and accountability have not been the priorities of the state attorney or the sheriff. For that reason, they both still get failing grades for credibility. I did also reach out to the sheriff's office to see if Officer Landreville was back on duty. He was placed on leave pending this investigation. We have not heard back tonight. Live outside JSO, Robert Bradfield, First Coast News on your side.